Hello and welcome to the MHR Podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Alice.
Alice, this week I thought we could talk about a few of these keywords that keep coming up now. So I've read a few articles that are using the term workaholism.
I feel like that gives it away straight away.
Yeah, what do you think I mean by workaholism?
I'm thinking employees that work more than they need to be doing.
Yeah. So I'm talking about overworking here. And I'm talking it in the sense of, are we addicted to our work, or do we have a work-life balance, or are we working needlessly?
Right.
How are we spending our time? What are the signs of a bad work-life practice, and what are the red flags we should be looking out for?
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a few, but what do you think you're a workaholic? Do you think you've got a good handle on it? Do you ever get an urge to check your emails out of your office hours?
No. So I was actually off yesterday.
Did you check your emails?
I didn't even think about work.
Yeah. Well, for some people, that would be a red flag. Didn't even care, did you, that you weren't
Thanks
then?
for that, Andy.
Yeah.
I was distracted. I had a lot of family members over.
Good.
So I was busy hosting.
Well,
but on Friday, knowing that I had a long weekend, I did work that evening.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
So actually, we've got to address that. That was an out-of-hours shift you pulled in there.
Yeah. I know. But I feel like, I don't know if this happens a lot, that when the holiday period is kind of at this point, there's a lot that you're covering for others.
Yeah.
So it's not just my workload, it's like, okay, I need to get that handed off. But it comes a lot with job, because I work with customers.
Yeah.
A lot of things can arrive quite last minute.
Okay.
And it's like, if you don't address it there or that week, if it trickles into the next week, it can cause a delay. But I probably would admit that I do more hours than
you should, or you feel you should be.
Yeah, I think maybe yeah.
Okay.
I think it depends as well what you're working on. So I've taken on some new big accounts, so I know that I want to put the time and effort in now.
Yeah.
Get a good grounding with them for about long term.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, sometimes I can work 2 hours on a success plan, and that's just literally typing, and it's because I'm a slow typer.
Well, but it's balance, isn't it? So
right.
it's a cultural thing here. Is it that your work is requiring you to work longer than you need to, and that's an unhealthy balance? Or is it that your attitude makes you want to work longer than maybe you usually would because you want to get something done? There is balance here, right?
Yeah.
There's different
and personality
things.
as well.
Yeah.
I think some people are very good at, they're all very productive and they stick to, right, this is when I start work and this is when I finish.
Yeah.
And I think some people's personalities, they like to go the 110%.
Yep.
I think I'm a 110% person.
And everyone's different, right? And not everything's black and white. So it's okay, your hours are here. You got to recognise that people work in different ways. Like I find like I'm a lot more productive in the afternoons and evenings sometimes than I might be in the morning.
Yep.
So I get, if I'm in quite a creative job and I like to be creative, so I find that as the day goes on, I get more creative and I kind of find a groove and I've got some more momentum, so I'll work in that way. Some people are like, no, you know what, I'm up at 5 and I get my best work done before midday. So it does change on that. But I think regardless, I think it's got to be about your choice to work. If you're going to work additionally to what you should be doing, that's got to be your choice, not an expectation. And by choice, I also mean something that's within your control. And that's where I think the workaholism comes in, because if you're a workaholic, you're overworking and it's all out of your control because you're not balancing your own life. Like it's like an addiction. And that's where we have to show some red flags there. Like when are you, you can be proactively working overtime or a bit of extra hours in there to be on top of a project. And that might be productive. But when is working becoming unproductive?
Yeah.
That's what we should be looking at in this term of workaholism. So we've been reading a couple of articles, haven't we? Any immediate thoughts from what you've read about this topic?
So one thing that kind of really stands out is that definition of like that unhealthy obsession.
Yeah.
But I think when you're talking about an obsession, it could be quite hard for an individual to spot it, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably, unless someone said to you, you're working like a lot of hours on that thing, that's when you probably think, oh, do you know what I am?
Yeah.
But what's been really interesting is knowing what are the signs of what we would kind of class under as our workaholic. Yeah.
Okay, so let's address it. Say we've got a colleague with us now and we're going to give them a bit of an intervention because we're a bit worried about their work-life balance or how they're addressing work, right?
Yeah.
We're going to take them through what we've seen. So we're going to be like, sorry, Graham. It's Graham who's joined us today. Graham, I just want to have a word with you because we're a bit worried that you're not really looking after yourself. There's a few signs we've seen that makes us think you're a bit of a workaholic and you need to look at your work-life balance, right? First one, you're working excessive working hours, like you've said. So you're consistently working long hours, you're staying late at the office, or frequently working on weekends and holidays without a clear need, and that's the hit. Now, like you've just said, sometimes you might want to log in and do a bit extra bit on an evening or a weekend or something. Now, I don't condone that. I like to be very clear cut my hours. I like to keep a good balance. But maybe you're like, it'll make me feel better because I'm ahead of a project. If you're doing that every weekend, we've got a problem because it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So, Graham, we've noticed it, right? And there's a red flag that goes with that. Right? When these hours are not due to specific deadlines or projects, that's the problem.
That's what I was going to say. So it's kind of like we having that awareness of, okay, what's on their plate, but if they're putting in the extra hours, then they don't need to be. And it's like, you know, that own personal activity they're doing. That is, I would say, a very clear sign that they are working a lot more than they need to be. But consistency, that's another word, isn't it, that you need to, if they're constantly doing it.
And I'd be like to Graham, I'd be like, as your manager, mate, no offense, not your mate, I'm your manager, right? So draw that line for a start, Graham. But if you are working on maybe your own development plan or learning opportunities on the weekend, I get it, it's your own internal development, maybe you put that extra time in. But if you're working on your core project, that shows me you're not balancing your work-life balance, you're not on top of your priorities, that's a red flag.
Yeah, definitely. So also another kind of sign, I guess, as a manager, is if they're in the position where they could share projects or delegate some of the work, and they're not doing that, they're trying to control everything. That's probably, again, a very clear sign that there's a reluctance to share the workload and kind of almost, I guess, micromanaging because they want so much control over everything they're involved in. So
they're giving themselves all that extra work, and that's why they're overworking. They're becoming workaholic. So actually, when there's a choice to delegate, like you say, instead of micromanage, that's a problem. Another one you could flag up to Graham. Sorry, Graham, but I feel like you're neglecting your own personal life in wake of this job space. That's not very good. You're avoiding your vacations. You're not taking your annual leave. You're taking your homework, your work home with you. You're constantly unavailable for personal or social activities because you decided work's a priority instead of that. And it's given me a load of red flags. You know, you're working frequently intrudes on your personal time. You're leading to strained relationships. Maybe stuff's not going well at home because you're not taking time for yourself or self-care. You know, maybe you need to, you know, maybe your appearance is not looking as good. You're not smart, you look a bit dishevelled. Why aren't you not looking after yourself?
They do say that kind of if your mind's messy, it does filter through into how you're presenting yourself. It goes into your social life. But what I wanted to add to that as well is from a manager's perspective as well, there are like HR software that helps you hopefully recognise if an employee isn't taking that annual leave. Because I think we're at this point in the year, we're end of August, people hopefully have taken a majority of their holiday already through the summer holidays. But if you've got an employee that isn't, it's probably showing that maybe if they're not taking it, why? Or maybe they feel like their workload is so much that they haven't got time to take it. And that's a
management problem, isn't it? It needs to be managed rather than be put on that employee because they clearly need support in how they're managing that workload.
Difficult one to address though if you think work's affecting their personal life, how to have that conversation.
And that's where you need to take guidance from HR to go, look, I'm worried about my employees' well-being. I don't feel like they're balancing the work well. They're clearly stressed. I think they're showing red flags of a bad work-life balance and they're taking their work too home with them. How do I ask the right questions to unlock those issues to offer them more support? Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Another couple one is constant preoccupation with work. This is a nasty red flag. So you're talking about work all the time. So you might have finished. It might be 7:00 in the evening, but all you're doing is talking about work, or you're talking about the projects you're working on, or you're talking to people at work about that stuff. So you're unable to disconnect. Right, you're always checking your emails constantly. It's on your personal phone. It's on your personal device, which is a data breach. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
So the red flag there is that you're gonna. It's going to be difficult for you to relax. It's going to be difficult for you to enjoy activities outside of work that are unrelated to it. Not a good conductor for reducing stress.
No. So I think that's an interesting one though, because I guess to some extent, some people, they love work. They love what they do. And I think if you look at business owners, it is their life. That's what they're building. So it can be very hard, I think, to actually say that's a flag in itself. But if you think that they haven't got any other hobbies that they're involved with, if they haven't got a mental break from work, 100% it's going to backfire, isn't it? And you're going to be so consumed by work that you're not giving yourself the break that you need, which I think then leads to health issues, doesn't it? So we kind of briefly spoke about that.
There's a few more kind of symptoms here that might show someone is a bit of a workaholic, but some of the running themes are here that actually productivity will decrease over time. You're working harder and harder and harder and harder. Your balance is way off. All you're doing is focusing about work. But actually, what you'll find after all those longer hours of putting it in, you're going to get diminishing returns. Because productivity will decrease because you'll be burnt out and exhausted. The quality of your work is going to diminish. So it's actually not worth you investing that extra time. You need to learn to recoup, refresh, look after your own mental well-being, and actually add more value at work when you are working. Sometimes that has more value than doing extra hours.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Difficulty saying no is another one. So overcommitting to projects and you have difficulty refusing work, probably because you haven't built a very healthy way of going, I really want to do that piece of work, but this is my priority right now. I have to push back, otherwise other things get sacrificed.
Yeah. Would you say that you learn to say no quite quick with workload?
I don't. I think everyone learns to say no too slow, right? Because it's not in our impulse. We want to appease people. We want to make sure our managers are happy. We don't want to be judged as being bad at our jobs. We don't want to be seen to not being able to do something because that looks like a negative.
True. Yeah, definitely.
But sometimes, and I think you'll have to learn this more through experience, right? Or for someone telling you, you have to realise that saying no is a positive thing if it means that the things that really matter to a business in your work are the things that are prioritised.
Yeah.
Because, you could be a busy fool and say yes to everything.
Yeah.
But if the core thing that you're relied on to do isn't delivered, then no one wins.
100%. I think I was a bit like that earlier this year. I was just like, 100%, I want to be involved. That was the thing, I just wanted to be involved. And then I realised, whoa, it's only so many hours in the day.
But then it goes on to points we've talked before about being a control freak. If you say yes to everything because you have to do it, you have to be involved, you can't say no, then you're not letting other people impact on something. And we've talked about it before, right? In an organisation, loads of people need to be involved. Things need to be shared. It can't be siloed. It can't all be on you.
No.
Because you're not benefiting from the mixed culture that your organisation has of how things can be done.
Yeah.
You're just creating a silo. You're also creating a knowledge blocker to everyone else because you're sitting on everything. There's a power to letting things go and allowing other people who think differently to do something better than you can. Yeah,
definitely. So another point we've got is about perfectionism. And I think that comes down to who you are, isn't it? I would say I'm a bit. Would you say you're a perfectionist?
No.
Not
I think I'm passionate about the things I do, but I think you have to. I always think some things need to be perfect. Yeah. Some things need to be what they need to be. Some things you're like, okay, if they just set clear expectations of what level things are going to be at based on what time and effort you can put to them.
Yeah. So I guess for a workaholic, they would be obsessing over every single thing they're involved with.
Yeah.
So again, over all the details, striving for unattainable kind of targets or for what it should look like or kind of the time that it should be delivered in. So, that again, I think would be quite clear to spot if someone's asking for more and more and more and you think, well, by everyone else's standard, that's been delivered or that is meeting expectations. Yeah. But for a workaholic, they're thinking, no, it's just not ready yet.
And that's also imaginable because then what happens when you got the employee like Graham who's making a mountain out of a molehill? I asked you to look at that job. What you've done is you've gone away, you've made it a bigger problem than it needs to be, you've over-engineered it, you're now trying to build a solution for it, and I didn't even ask for half of that. We didn't need it. Like, you've gone and made more work out of something that didn't need it. Like, that's to me is a red flag of someone either just creating more work for the sake of it.
Yeah, definitely. So then for Graham as well, if he's then part of a team, it is going to probably cause tension, isn't it, amongst his colleagues?
Yeah.
He's probably going to be quite hard to work with.
Yeah.
And I think for others as well, it can maybe have a negative impact on how they view work. Maybe they start questioning, should I be going to that extent?
Or worried about, like, if that's what Graham's doing, is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, why is the culture like this? It's not a good kind of representation of how a company should work. So it makes people, you don't need that kind of filtering down across other people, especially if, say, for example, Graham manages other people. Suddenly they're creating a culture where actually overworking is the standard, and then that's anti-productive.
No, definitely. So really important then actually for manager or HR or even colleagues, if you're spotting these kind of red flags in a colleague, then it's quite important because it can then, I guess, have kind of that butterfly effect, can't it, across different teams and maybe across the business if expectations are being set that are unrealistic. So how do we address workaholism?
So firstly, we've got to call it out, right? We've just called out the signs and the red flags. So awareness and education is important. You've got to educate employees about the dangers of workaholism and promote a healthy work-life balance. You've got to champion that. Right? You got to tell Graham that he needs to encourage more breaks in his life. So encouraging to take more regular breaks, making sure you're taking your vacations, your paid time off, your annual leave, your personal time, and don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
You are entitled to it. It's not a luxury. It's a basic of what your role is. It's your contract.
Yeah.
You are entitled to those things. Monitoring your workload. So a really good manager will tell you, I want you to tell me when you feel like you're under pressure. Flag it, because then we know where our limits are, and then we can start thinking about what resource we need.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is sit on it and be scared to tell someone that you're going over your limit, because that doesn't help anyone.
No, it really doesn't.
Open communication again, so fostering an environment where employees can feel comfortable discussing their workload and stress levels.
Yep.
Positive culture, and then setting boundaries. Encourage people to set clear boundaries between work and personal life, whether that's how your diary's managed, how your time's managed, or going, you know what, it's past 6 o'clock, I know I might work with you, but I don't want to talk about work right now. This is a space where I keep this about my personal life and work in that space.
Yeah.
And that's how I keep a healthy balance.
Yeah, definitely. So for addressing workaholism, it's awareness, encouraging breaks, monitoring workload, that open communication, and then overall setting boundaries. So probably, like you say, if you start a job, the boundaries are set, aren't they? But probably that's what a manager should be doing, is saying, checking in with them, you know, having those regular meetings and saying, how is the workload? You know, is there anything you want to tell me? Because ultimately it's going to benefit everyone in your team, and the business is going to be better off, isn't it? Because you're going to be more productive if you're communicating.
Couldn't agree more. And I think the longer someone's in a role, the more likely they are to slip those things, because they might go further away from what their job is originally, and it'll evolve around them. And it's a manager's job to go and use the HR system or the platform or the advice from a team to go, how do we check on this, keep them straight and narrow, make sure you got a good balance.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, I feel like we've overworked this topic almost. We've done it to death.
We have.
So we should have a break now and encourage a better balance on this conversation and stop talking about work.
Brilliant.
So we'll talk about it next week instead. So I've been Andy.
I'm Alice.
We'll see you next week.
See you soon. Bye.